This is Heroine Addiction, presented by That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster, where two middle-aged men talk about webcomics for teenage girls. I'm Isekai Sensei Sama, aka Brad. I'm joined as always by Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Hello.
So, this time we are talking about Villains Are Destined to Die. This is a little bit different from what we've done so far. It doesn't lean as heavily into the romance stuff, at least not yet.
Almost frustratingly.
And it's more of a downer, I'd say, than any of the other ones we've read so far.
Frustratingly, I would say.
All right, so as always, I'll read the summary here, and then we'll jump into it. This game's got me obsessed. It's like it's taken over my life. Wait, hardcore mode activated? No. It has literally taken me and thrown me into the part of Penelope Eckhart. Love is easy as the heroine, but as the hated villainess, I'm trying very hard not to die. At the hands of my brothers, the prince, a fork. Every possible ending is death. This world is stacked against me, but can my wits and insider game knowledge score the affection of these male characters? Or the reset button? So, yeah, a lot of the other ones that we've looked at so far are just sort of your standard fantasy isekai. You know, you get either reincarnated or transported into this other world, and you know the novel or whatever, and you're going through it. Mm-hmm. But this one does something that I have seen in other series, but it's pretty different from what I would say is the standard isekai villainous stuff, which is it leans very heavily into the game aspect of things.
Yeah, I mean, so we have our standard down on her luck and or abused Korean woman transported into a novel and or game. And in this case, she is hardcore committed to getting out of it.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be here. She doesn't want to romance any of these guys. In the game, apparently the guys murder the villainess in like almost every hard. So the normal game you play as the heroine, and that's easy mode. Everybody likes the heroine. Hard mode is you have to play as the villainess, and if you lose, she's like brutally executed on screen.
Right.
And so now she's playing as the villainess, and she's like secondhand traumatized. Yeah. And also the story of Penelope Eckhart mimics her own life story of having been raised as the illegitimate child of a wealthy conglomerate family. She got brought in, the brothers didn't like her, the father ignored her, and she had just escaped all that. She was just going to college, things were finally getting better, and then she gets sucked into this game that sets her back to zero.
Yeah.
And so she carries with her a lot of bitterness from her previous life.
Now, I don't remember the beginning. I didn't go back and reread this one because I don't like to reread depressing things. But in the game, I think Penelope is just sort of like a random person that reminds the Duke of his lost daughter.
In the game, she is an orphan plucked off the streets.
Yeah.
Because she looks like his daughter.
And so the original game, the heroine, is the original biological daughter who was lost and then gets found again.
Yes.
So they set up this conflict early on where you have this orphan girl who they brought in to replace the daughter, who I believe they think is dead at that point.
She was lost at a carnival or a festival or something, and yeah, she's been gone for 6 years.
And then when she comes back, you obviously have this conflict of jealousy because they want to get rid of this orphan who's not the real daughter, right? And you know, she's been acting out and being awful all this time, so they'll just throw her away. Like she's she's a terrible person. Why would they keep her around? And they found the original daughter, you know?
Well, and yeah, and the protagonist quickly identifies with the villainess because the villainess does act out and she doesn't mesh well with the family. But that's not really the villainess's fault because the Duke who adopts her brings her into this family without consulting her two what will become young brothers who are still mourning the death of their mother. Like the mother is also dead. So
well, the brothers are older than her, though, right?
They're older than her, but they're still
young at the time.
Yeah, when she comes into the family, the older one is kind of old enough to just ignore the situation. He has no interest in her whatsoever. The younger one is still very bitter about his sister being replaced.
Right. Which is interesting because as the story progresses, the younger one is much more ready to accept the new and not a awful person Penelope.
The blessing and the curse of the younger one is that he's much more emotional. He wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah.
So we once did on a previous episode of the main podcast, we did one of our gag product advertisements. And we did it for dense female lead syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I might have written part of the script for that one. And like I wrote something about like, why can't you realize that this isn't just a game and that these are real people who actually might care about you?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that I was talking about this one. This one has that more than any. Like where Secret Lady has a lot of edgelordiness, I would say, like a very Linkin Park vibe. This has angst. This is a Rise Against vibe.
Yeah.
She is angry.
Well, and to an extent it makes sense, and then also to an extent it doesn't, because the two sides of this coin are she is coming into this in a position where the original Penelope was really, really terrible for a long time. And so really does deserve the villainous title. Now, you can give her a bit of leeway in that because she's treated horribly by basically everyone. But at the same time, you know, she's awful to the servants. She's just awful all around. So like
the original Penelope seems to have like a child star syndrome.
Yeah.
Where she was given way too much power. Like she was given money in place of affection.
I mean, it makes sense. Like she came from nothing. She was an orphan. She had literally nothing to her name. And suddenly she has anything she could possibly want. Mm-hmm. Like, and as a child, what was she, 10? I want to say something like that.
She very young. Yeah.
You know, just suddenly having all of this, you with the mind of a child, you would obviously be like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. I suffered for so long. Now this is all mine. And then coming to find that people are still treating her horribly because they know she was an orphan not that long ago, or she's to replace this other daughter, and, you know, people aren't treating her very nicely. And so she starts acting out as a child would.
Well, and you have this problem too of Penelope, the in-game villainess, is not raised by anyone. The father doesn't play much of a role in his children's lives. The two older siblings were raised probably by their mother, who is dead now. Mm-hmm. And so there's not like any servant or anyone who steps in to be a parent figure to Penelope. She just kind of has to figure it all out on her own.
Right. Now, the flip side you have there is that after she starts trying to be better, it takes everyone way too long to sort of go, oh, okay, like she's trying now. Like let's temper ourselves a bit. Maybe we treated her too harshly. Like maybe some of this is our fault. Like no, everybody's just like, no, she was awful for so long. This is a trick, or whatever it is.
Well, there's another thing going on here, and this is the distorted reality and like the hyper drama of all of the heroin addiction comics we've read, is they are on the cusp of just cutting her throat.
Yeah.
Which is not super realistic even for the olden times. Like, I mean, granted, like kids got hit back then. I could see her being like beaten and abused, but like literally she is in constant danger of one of the male protagonists just becoming angry, taking out his sword and killing her.
I think the only one that really makes actual sense for is the prince.
Yeah.
Because he's been established to be like a lunatic sort of from the get-go. But the way it plays out with her brothers and her father and like some of the sort of more peripheral male leads, if you can call them leads at that point, it seemed it would make sense if it was sort of like a crime of passion kind of thing where she pissed them off and they just like lashed out. But most of the things that she does wouldn't warrant a crime of passion. No. It would be more like, this is the last straw. We're going to send you to a monastery or something like that. She wouldn't be killed for it.
They treat her like she's a dog. Like, this is, okay, you've bit me for the last time. I'm taking you out back and shooting you.
Right.
Like, it's, so I totally get where the protagonist's like dense female. I don't know if you consider this to be a dense female lead.
Part of the problem with diagnosing that at this point is that the actual romantic relationship part didn't really start until very recently, some 70 some chapters in, because the main focus for the romantic subplot is the prince, and that's a very strange relationship, and there very well may be a dense female lead aspect to it coming up soon in the upcoming chapters, but I don't think it's there yet because he started off as I'm just going to murder you right here in this garden, and so for her, there's no possible way that there's romance there, even though she's sort of like using that to her advantage a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I was going to say is, it's kind of a frustrating comic because I get the protagonist's hesitancy to engage with the world as if it were real. Mm-hmm. Because unlike other ones we've read, it's like you said at the beginning, the gamification is way more a part of this. When she initially enters the world, she can only speak in the multiple choice options presented by the game. And eventually she unlocks the ability to speak. So right from the get-go, she feels very trapped in a game. These characters are not real people to her, except to the extent where they remind her of people from her previous life who she's now finally getting the opportunity to kind of like tell off. And she doesn't really want to make up with any of them. Mm-hmm. She hates these people. And there's kind of this thing being set up that the people in the game are similar to the people in her real life that she doesn't like, but they're also different in that they have the ability to change at this point.
Yeah, it's very strange that pretty much all the other series that I read, even if the premise is, you've gone into an Otomo game, right? They pretty much all dump the premise of this was a novel, this was a game, whatever it is, and go, hey, this is real now. And so that's why you get dense female lead syndrome type 2, where the female lead is constantly trying to go, oh, but the original novel, oh, but the original game, it goes this way. And even though it's like, no, you are different now, so you have changed the world. Whereas in this series, there's a very clear path through the entire thing that is saying you are still in a game. Even up into as far as we are now, there's still game UI that is happening. So even though she's sort of like slowly losing the UI over time, it's still very present And there's always a reminder for her that this isn't real.
Yeah, I thought the point where she's like, oh, maybe if I die in the game, I can get brought out, or I'll see the reset button and I could start over. And she doesn't see the reset button when she's in mortal danger, and she realizes she could perhaps die permanently.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe that would be the impetus to start abandoning some of the game world. But again, unlike a lot of the other ones, this girl wants to get back to her previous life. She was a university student. She was finally taking control of her situation. She was getting out of it. She was doing better, and it got swept out from under her, and she does not want to be here. And so as we go through the romance options, she's kind of just trying to find somebody to get to 100% affection rating with and get out.
Yeah.
She doesn't really care who. She just wants to win the game, and she's got a ticking clock because on her birthday, that's when hard mode ends and the protagonist of normal mode comes in. So if she doesn't have the game won by her birthday, then she's on track to die.
Right.
And I don't know where they're going to go with that.
There's a lot of stuff up in the air right now. Part of the draw of this series for me, the drama of this is that, as opposed to other series where you sort of just get like, oh, here's a nice thing that happened, and here's a nice thing that happened, and here's a nice thing that happened, and you get some drama interspersed in there, but like for the most part, you never worry too much about the female lead because it's a romance thing, right? Mm-hmm. This one is a real roller coaster of drama, and there's never really a point where you go, oh, everything's safe right now. There's always sort of a looming thing in the background, and as you get the resolution of something and you get some nice thing happening, and oh, her father is trying to like be nicer to her or whatever, and then something else comes along that's like, oh, you're still in mortal danger.
Yeah. I don't know that I ever got the vibe that she was going to die. I don't think...
yeah, I mean, how all these go, it's just like, well, yeah, if you kill a female lead, it's over, right?
Well, I don't think this, yeah, I mean, it could be a tragedy, I guess, where she could die, but I don't think that's how it goes. But like, I honestly don't know if this one's going to end with her getting out of the game.
Yeah.
Like, I could see that happening because all of the romance options also kind of, they each have a plus and a minus. And like the first one she's going for is, I actually want to talk about the romance options first. So you got her two brothers, which are romance options in a Pornhub step kind of situation there, I guess. And then you've got the Crown Prince, who we'll probably come back to. You've got kind of a lowborn knight figure.
Well, he's a slave.
Yeah. And then a sorcerer who is in charge of an information guild, and nobody knows he's a sorcerer. She decides to go for the easy option, which is the knight she rescues from slavery. I hate that whole subplot. Like, that needs to stop at some point.
Well, I have read some spoilers, and apparently you will get your wish.
Okay.
So I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but some people were really upset. It's interesting because, yeah, he's the one that she sort of goes all in on, and is raising the affection level as quickly as possible. He's the one who she's said, like, this should be the easiest path. I'm going to do this. I'm going to not worry about everybody else. Just don't let their affection scores go down. Just maintain them. Concentrate on this slave knight person. Mm-hmm. And then that'll be my out. And so, you know, she's getting his affection level up into, I don't know, what was it, like 60,
it's close
70,
to
something like
close
that?
to 80% at this point.
Right.
But he's super easy to level up because he is just like happy to be there. He's really
Maybe,
like the ultimate sub.
maybe, maybe. Excluding the spoiler part of this, every interaction with them that I've read, or rather recently anyway, you know, I'm sort of looking at the interaction and like looking at the way that they're drawing his face and the way he's speaking and everything. And I'm just going, I'm sort of confused why his affection level is so high. He sort of seems like he's definitely subservient, but he doesn't seem to me like he's okay with the situation.
So I'm guessing the way you're talking, the spoiler, you could cut this, but the spoiler is that he turns on her.
I don't know if I can say it exactly as like turning on her, but there's definitely some like subversion of expectations. I don't have 100% clear picture on it. I just know that yeah.
I won't make you go all in on the spoilers, but all I can say is the way it is depicted in the comic thus far, if you take it at face value, is that he is like ready to lick her boots, and she is leaning into that. She does not care. She, as long as it gets her the win, she's okay. She's definitely not treating him like a real person. If it turns out that she is like in the game for good, and that's how this ends, and like she can't end up with him because the power dynamics of their relationship are so fucking weird.
Well, yeah, and I don't see how that ends properly anyway, because like if she gets him to 100% and then like runs away with him or whatever to live out the rest of her life, like what is their life going to be? I mean, she's got her own money at this point, and like she is rich, but like they're gonna live as, you know, villagers out in the middle of nowhere with, you know, just living off the land. You know, it's not like she can continue to be a noble with a husband who was a slave or whatever. You know.
Yeah. So then I want to talk about the two brothers as a potential candidate. There's an older brother and a younger brother. I mean, they're both older than her, but one is the eldest and one is the middle.
Yeah. And Derek is just the worst.
Derek is like, I don't talk much and I'm very businessy. This character is in every shoujo thing or dating sim thing. He's the quiet boy, the quiet, serious boy.
My issue with him, and he's like the only one that I actually remember his name because I hate him so much. He is set up as like the most intelligent and capable, and yet he continues to treat her the worst, even though she is visibly trying to not be awful anymore. And so it doesn't make sense to me the way he continues to treat her.
Well, yeah, I I'm going to push back and say it also doesn't make sense to me why anyone wants to impress her. Like, I don't necessarily get, while Derek is like kind of mean, the younger brother at some point just like flips a coin in his head and is like, I'm good now.
I think he's probably starved for affection, and he sees an avenue to get that motherly or sisterly affection that he craves so much.
Yeah, so let's clarify this. If she 100%'s their relationship, is it a romantic relationship? I was unclear on that.
I don't know. I mean, like, there's obviously the possibility they're not blood related, so you could be like, oh, it's okay because they're not blood related.
Yeah.
But like the interactions that they've had so far don't necessarily strike me as romantic.
No, there was one panel where it mentioned like familial bliss
Yeah.
as a potential ending. I don't know, but I don't think they are seriously being considered as options. They are almost like the younger one is, I don't know, like a puppy, and the older one serves as like a vent for her past life frustrations. Like
I can see that.
the best times with him are when she's like, you know what? I don't need your affection score to be quite this high.
Right.
I can afford to tell you off a little bit. And now let me expertly tell you off.
Yeah.
So that's always fun to watch. That's very cathartic. If you ever had anybody in your life you really wished you could just give a good dressing down, she knows exactly what to say. But then there's the maid. She also has like reputation with the household staff. The maid who was like torturing her at the beginning that she decides to like save from being fired. That maid just randomly decides like, you know what? You're the best mistress ever, and I just want to serve you as best as I possibly can, and like your happiness is its own reward.
I think that's guilt. I think she feels guilty because she was treating her horribly for so long, and like with sort of a good reason, but not really. And then when Penelope is like, no, like I'm gonna be good and I'm gonna save you and everything, she's like, oh shit, I screwed up.
That is, you know, one of the things to reference another older episode of the podcast we talked about was weird cultural things that mix and turn into something new. And one trope I have seen in many of these manhwa dating sim ones that take place in kind of European inspired medieval times is the help torturing the villainess or whatever. And it's like, I've never seen that in any Western media because I think we understand that like that is not your place to do. Like if you got caught doing that, it really doesn't matter if you were doing it to the one nobody liked, they'd fire you.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know how that goes.
There's a part of that where it's like they could potentially gloss over it as like, well, nobody really cares about this person. No one will believe them. They already abused the help. So if they start going, oh, they put sand in my lemon tart, nobody's going to notice, you know.
Can you imagine if the utensils in Beauty and the Beast started with his food? I don't know.
I would watch that movie.
It's a weird one. I just see that all the time in these manhwa, and I don't know quite if that came from a Western thing or if that's a Korean thing that got in there. But
I don't know.
So the other love interest, well, there's two more to go, I guess. But the Crown Prince, first time they meet, he puts a sword to her throat and tells her to justify her existence or he will kill her. And
which just makes you immediately fall in love with him, right?
That's a problematic start to a romance.
The Crown Prince is a psychopath, like almost literally. The dude, no, psychopath is wrong. He's a masochist. Both
sadist, masochist,
both sadist and masochist, because his affection scores go up the quickest, and not because she's trying. She's constantly rebuking him, and he gets off on that.
He wants to fight her,
yeah,
as much as he wants to love her.
So, like, she'll like rebuke him, and then be like, "Oh, the affection score is going to go down," and then she looks and it's like jumped 10 points, and she's like, "What the heck? What's wrong with this guy?"
Yeah, the one part where I got a little bit of dense female lead because I didn't hate her not fully engaging with the romance or her being very walking on eggshells around all the protagonists. I didn't mind that, but there are lots of times where it's very obvious that one of the characters is feeling guilty about the way they behaved, or her telling them off actually got to them and made them think back on their behavior, and that raised their affection score a little bit. Like she tells the older brother at one point, you never listened to me. Like she gets out of a jam and he didn't believe that she was innocent of what she was accused of doing, and he didn't even hear her out. He just said, like, we'll make up some lie, you take the blame for a lesser thing, and we'll call it the end. And he tries to talk to her about that, and she's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I'm rightfully pissed, and I don't care if your affection score lowers. I'm going to tell you exactly why you are wrong. And that does get under his skin, and his affection score goes up because he realized he acted like an asshole. And she's like, why did his affection score go up? What is with these people?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why are you bothering to talk to them if you don't think... And I guess maybe that's like the combination of like the real life abuse with the in-game abuse. And she's like, nobody cares what I have to say.
Yeah.
It couldn't possibly have worked. But yeah, the Crown Prince, he grew on me.
Well, I will say he is my favorite. So while I don't think that she should end up with, well, quite frankly, she shouldn't end up with any of these men. She'll probably end up with the Crown Prince. She shouldn't, but he is still my favorite because he's insane. Like the insanity of every scene that he's in is so entertaining.
He's kind of her best match, or he would be the best match for Penelope.
Yeah.
The complication in this one is that she's still forced to roleplay Penelope.
Well, yeah, but she does do a very good job of it.
She does, but it's still not her. Like, a lot of the ways these people feel about her is not based on their interactions with her. Like, granted, now that they are interacting with her and not Penelope, they're doing better. She's making a better impression, but she's also not engaging with them in good faith. And I kind of wonder if the story is going to do anything with this, because, like, she's apologizing when she doesn't really mean it. She's asking all sorts of favors when she doesn't really want to be asking favors. She's telling people what they need to hear as a survival mechanism, not out of any honesty from her. So, like, all these relationships are patently false.
Well, I will say, I think the father knows what's going on. I think he can tell what she's doing, and that's why he's coming around, because he can see that she is putting up a front in order to, like, not lose her position. And I think he feels sorry for her, and that's why he's coming around.
I don't hate the father, but one of the things they're doing now that's kind of interesting and sort of keeps knocking me off my feet here is, like, is it going to end with her escaping the game, or is it going to end with her embracing the game? And while she can see their affection scores, she cannot engage with them as people. Now they've introduced a complication where it is going to be much harder for her to see affection scores.
Spoilers.
So yeah, but, like, that kind of had to happen. Because as long as she can still see that game mechanic, it's just a game.
Yeah.
As long as you could put a number to how much somebody likes you, then you're not really talking to them.
I almost wonder if this will do the kind of subversion thing that I've seen in other series where they go, oh, guess what? It wasn't actually a woman from Korea. It was magic that gave her these memories of this alternate world that is Korea. And it was magic that was showing her this game overlay. And it was all done by, the wizard guy or some weird god magic thing to make her a better person. And, like,
Well, you could be onto something there, because there is a point where she encounters the other remaining romantic interest who is a sorcerer, and he uses his magic, and she comments that his magic, he teleports her or something, and it feels the same as when the game teleports her. So that when and then there's another part where she accepts a quest to use a map or something, and it says, like, say the word go, and you can go somewhere on the map. And when she does that, her character speaks like the elder language or whatever. And so the magic system in the game is the game.
Yeah.
It's able to play with the rules of the game. That's what sorcerers are able to do.
And you know what? If it has something to do with that particular sorcerer, that would make a lot of sense, because he's super creepy and like attached to her for not really a good reason.
I didn't get that vibe from the sorcerer.
Really?
You kept saying the Crown Prince was the best option, and I was like, well, the sorcerer doesn't have a lot of charisma, and maybe that is him like making himself purposely less threatening. I was like, he seems kind of neutral.
I don't really care about the charisma part. There's like an underlying creepiness that I get from him, because he's sort of completely taken in and fascinated by Penelope almost immediately. And if it sort of feels like an obsession.
He is kind of nearby every time events start getting out of control.
Yeah. And so if he is a central point of like this weird game thing that's going on, that would make much more sense to me, rather than right now where we just go, oh, he's just a weird creep guy who like got a little bit of something from this woman and decided that she was the one he had to be with forever, and he's head over heels or whatever.
You know, I'm fan theorizing at this point. So this is just my theory. This isn't spoilers.
A manhwa theory.
Yes. Like I could see in the first game, or in the normal mode, I should say, he's described as being kind of a fairy godmother type figure to the protagonist, the real daughter. I could kind of see a future where, like, since the game's rules are magic, like, could he have sucked her into the game?
Yeah.
That's interesting. The other thing I did chuckle at is that it is a pay-to-win game.
Yeah.
In real life and in the game.
Yeah, and that's really weird, because they're going into it and they're being like, oh, her actual money is disappearing. Like gold coins in her treasure chest are disappearing. It's like, to where? Like gold just disappears. Like is God holding on to him? Like, oh yeah, I could really use it. So yeah, it's a very strange format, but it would be interesting. It's interesting just on the surface, but it would be, I think, even more interesting to subvert the subversion and say like, it wasn't actually a game this whole time.
Something has to be going on. There's two ways this is going to go. Either they're going to do something with all of this dissonance between life and the game, or they're not going to do anything with it and they don't know it exists. And it's either going to be really dumb or it's going to be really smart.
I'm hopeful, because
I'm hopeful too.
I feel like it's been well written, well paced so far. And so to drop the ball in that way, I don't think that would make sense.
So this is a little behind the scenes. We were initially supposed to record earlier than this. I had read about the beginning of The Hunt.
Okay.
And I was like, if you give me just a little more time, I feel like I gotta get further, because I gotta know where this is going. And that's what I kept thinking the whole time I was reading it. I was like, I gotta know where this is going. And that there are worse feelings to instill in a reader by far. But I got to the end of The Hunt. I get through the trial, and that's kind of spoilery stuff. But it's all very dramatic, and she performs very well, and it's very cathartic and everything. And it deepens her relationship with the Crown Prince, and that's where, yeah, the Crown Prince kind of, as the reader, you kind of start to think he's the best match. And definitely that wizard guy. Yeah, now that you said he's suspicious, I'm kind of like going back and seeing it. Like, he does always really want to get her alone and like say something to her. And I can't tell, like, is he going to say something to her to guide her, or is he manipulating her? He's the only one who's like, never trust a man without a vice. We don't know what his thing is yet.
Yeah.
Everybody else has a thing.
Yeah, so I would say that the story is like for a Otomo game manhwa, the story is very well told and interesting, and like it's got intrigue. It's obviously got that drama. There's a lot going on, and I think it's very well executed.
Yeah, I agree. So far, everything I've seen has made me want to know more. I am getting to that point of I need a big reveal now. Like, I'm what, like 2.5 seasons in
Yeah,
at this point.
we're like 11 chapters into the second season. So based on the way that things have sort of been going at this point, I would say probably within 20 chapters, something fairly big will happen.
I definitely need something that tells me which direction they're going to go. Is she going to stay in the game, or is she going to leave the game? That's kind of what I need to know. I need some indication of where we're going here, because I'm kind of thinking this is a permanent thing. Like, I'm kind of leaning towards she's trapped in this game, but they also haven't gone too ham on letting us get attached to any of the characters.
Yeah.
So that's what I need. Cause like right now, I did like all the political intrigue. It is fun to watch her solve the challenges put before her. And she does it in ways that are not like an ass pull. She solves the problems with the tools available to her. The audience could probably come up with the same solutions. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, short of the thing where it's like, oh, the game is taking over my body to do a thing, everything makes sense. There isn't anything that you go like, why would she have done that? How could she have come up with that? Like, it all falls into place within the world that has been built.
And even the times where the game takes over her body, it is predictable that will happen in certain situations, because she points out at its core, this is a romance game. It's not a combat game. There might be some kind of mini game mechanic that pops up here and there, but for the most part, we're not here to fight. If there's a fight, the game's probably going to handle it.
Right.
So that's also different from a lot of these ones where they get sucked into the novel and they have to use magic or combat or something. But yeah, that's what I really need right now. I liked the resolution of the hunting tournament arc. But like, I was satisfied with the season 2 wrap up. I was satisfied with the season 1 wrap up. But yeah, I need him to get somewhere now.
Yeah, I do wonder what the length of this is going to be. Is season 3 going to be the end? Because they're talking about like, oh, she's only got like 2 months left until her birthday or whatever, and that's going to be.
Or does she have to coexist with Penelope, or the real daughter Yvonne, and that's going to be a whole new wrinkle? I'm okay with that if they want to keep it going and keep adding challenges, but I'm at a point right now where I'm not letting myself root for any romances or any characters, because she doesn't think they're real people, and so I don't think they're real people.
Yeah.
And they're icky. like a lot of the romances are kind of ew.
Yeah.
Like the slave guy calling her master and seeming to mean it in like the worst way you can mean that. It's I don't want you to have sex with him. That would be very inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean,
You own him.
I would say the most romantic end pairing that I could think of would be the younger brother, which
No.
it's still problematic. So that's why I don't think like any of them are really work out because like
For me, it's the Crown Prince because they rib on each other a little.
yeah, but you're right, and that is probably the most like the most wanted pairing. But again, he's insane.
Yeah, he did essentially cut her throat. So that's the icky part of that. Like, I don't know how we move past that. That's a downfall of a lot of romance I have noticed, and that includes books. This isn't just manhwa or anything. A lot of romance stories, because they're fiction, they can go there, and I try not to hold it against them too much, but
I sort of feel like the best end game for this whole series is like she doesn't actually end up with any of these men because they all are problematic, but like continues to live as a noble daughter because honestly her relationship with the father seems to be the most real and wholesome and able to be salvaged.
The relationship with the father, the maid, and the butler, love it.
Yeah.
Those are all great.
Like find a new guy who wasn't part of the original game.
Maybe Yvonne can come in and save us with a Penelope Yvonne ship. The other option no one ever thought of, and
I'll tell you what, these except for the manhwa that is explicitly the point, they really shy away from
I bet.
I don't know what the Korean word is, but yuri.
Probably any homosexuality. It's interesting. I don't know what I want to happen in this one. So that is the first one of these where I have had this much uncertainty.
But that's the drama of it, right?
Yeah, no. I think that is to its credit. It's kind of contingent on the end. A lot of the ones we've done so far, I'm like, I could stop here and still have really enjoyed my time. Mm-hmm. This one, you could have an ending that makes me retroactively hate everything. Or retroactively think that was like amazing.
I don't know that they could do something that would make me think the entire thing was no good, but they could definitely screw it up at the end. Fumble it at the finish line.
If she gets out of the game, it's basically the equivalent of it was all a dream.
Yeah. You could do that, but you would have to have some kind of like underlying, oh, she learned this, and so
how did it affect the real world somehow?
Right. Or like, because of what happened in the game, now she can go back to her original family and like, do whatever she needs to do to sort of solve that situation or, something like that.
One of the interesting things they're doing, this is a very minor, well, I'm going to say it's not a spoiler that's going to ruin your enjoyment. We find out that she was studying some kind of archaeology.
Yeah.
In Korea.
Yeah.
And her interest in archaeology has been hinted at a couple of times here and there in the story. But most recently, she found a magical artifact, and then she went and started researching the history of that people who created the artifact. And so I'm wondering if she might become a little more attached to the world. She might get into the archaeology of the world because it doesn't seem like a lot of people in this world care about that. Mm-hmm. And there's a complicated relationship with magic, as there is in all of these. And that's usually to artificially engineer some drama by them having to hide their shit. But
yeah. And unfortunately, going down that road leans heavily towards the prince being the male lead. Because
I think that's my prediction. If you had to give me a prediction, this is my fan theorizing again. This is not a spoiler. I'm just guessing. Guessing it's the prince.
Yeah.
Because so far, aside from, I kind of like that they gave her a little bit of badassery. She's not much of a fighter, but they gave her a couple of moments here and there that helps put her a little bit more on equal footing with the prince. All of these relationships have really bad power dynamics.
Yeah.
And the prince versus her power dynamic starts off on like the worst possible foot.
Well, except for one of the series that's pretty high up on my list, where the power dynamic is 100% the other direction.
In a romance novel, I can forgive the prince. In real life, no.
Yeah.
In fiction, yes. Especially like this fiction where the morality is so like,
yeah, and
you could just murder anybody willy-nilly in this.
Yeah, and they're doing that thing where they're going like, "Hey, look, the prince is changing. Like he was an insane tyrant, but because he's falling in love with the
but now he's nice to you."
Right. And it's
he's
like
still an insane tyrant to everybody else.
That's not good enough. You can't hand wave away all of the murder.
But I can change him. I mean, I've famously quoted this on every episode of Heroine Addiction, probably. I like Twilight.
Yeah.
And he constantly threatens to kill her. And that's not good.
But it's his baser instincts that are taking over.
Only because we, the reader, know he's not under any circumstances going to kill her. In real life, you don't know that. Yeah. So you got to err on the side of caution.
In real life, if the guy is sort of hinting at wanting to murder the girl, it normally happens.
Yeah. Yeah, in romance novels, red flags can just be like bait. But in real life, not so much. So I'm willing to forgive it. I could go that way.
So, any more story points that we should hit?
I don't think so. Not without getting into major spoilers.
Okay, well, we have to talk about the art.
Okay.
Because personally, my opinion is that this is one of the better looking manhwa that's out there. It's definitely got a certain style to it, so it's maybe not like everybody's cup of tea, but it is very consistent and very stylized, and I think very well executed.
Consistent and competent, I would say. It didn't blow me away as much as some of the other ones did with their use of the textures and the fashion. I feel like some of the highs of the other ones are higher than this.
Yeah.
But their lows are certainly much lower.
Yeah.
So this one does bring a consistent, competent art style. I think it's good.
But I also think it's on the higher end of this is going to be difficult for you because I'm showing you all of the best.
I'm sure it gets worse.
But there's some that I have on my list here that are not very good art, but the story is so good that it sort of is compelling in its own way. Whereas this one, you have a very good story, a very compelling story, but the art that is giving you that story is a great medium to pass that story to you. It does a really good job of conveying the feeling of all of the scenes that are going on.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's like, to break the art down a little bit more, I would say the illustration quality, just like the still images, probably like 6 to 7 out of 10 for me. The direction, like the panel organization, the shot composition, that sort of thing, that is closer to an 8 or a 9.
Sure.
I think I don't want to say there's room for improvement. There's always room for improvement, but there's nothing wrong. Like the anatomy is not bad. I mean, other than the distortions that all of these have where the limbs are impossibly long and stuff like that. But
They picked a style.
Yeah.
Like the only way that you could maybe be like, oh, this could be better is to use a different style, at which point you really wouldn't want to do that in the middle of the series.
Yeah, you could always add more detail and stuff, but you got to stop at some point to get the comic out.
Yeah.
I will say for this one, this was the first one where I consumed this the way it was intended to be consumed, on my cell phone. And you might be happy to know I walked out to get lunch today. And as I was walking back, I was doing the thing you're not supposed to do and walking while reading the comic. And
Got hit by a truck and got isekai.
No, I was on. Yeah, that would be what would happen to me, is I get trapped in one of these things then. Oh, that is maybe save that one.
You'd be like, Brad was getting me ready for this the whole time.
How pissed would you be if I was the one that got isekai'd?
We'll find some way to communicate so I can help you.
No, I legit walked past my house.
Oh, nice.
I was on a sidewalk, and I think I was walking. It's about a mile walk from my house to where I was going, and I walked like an extra quarter mile. I looked up, and I was like, I got to the end of the sidewalk where it goes into the woods, and I was like, huh. So it was an engaging story.
Yeah.
It made me walk past my house.
Gotcha.
I will say though, like I did actually like the experience of reading this on a cell phone. It was, I'm not going to say better. I mean, if you're going to do it for like hours at a time, the way I was doing it, it did kind of make my eyes hurt after a while, but you're also probably not supposed to do it while you're moving. And I don't know. I was just like, the font's perfect, the framing's perfect. It's just so it's a lot easier to appreciate what they're doing when I'm scrolling through it. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is actually very convenient.
So I consume these manhwa in basically all of the different ways. So I'd say mostly it's on my desktop, but I also, when I'm out of the house, I read it on my cell phone. And then I've also started reading on my tablet, and getting the different, sort of formats. The desktop is definitely sort of, I won't say the worst because that has the wrong connotation, but it's the least good of the three because of just the way that these are formatted, as opposed to maybe just a regular manga where it's more that sort of comic book page that you get.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say is when you're reading when I read the Shonen Jump app on my phone, it is like I'm scrolling in and out, zooming and stuff to see certain details in a panel. And it's like, oh, this is very inconvenient. I know that this is not the format this was designed for. And conversely, reading these manhwa on my desktop makes it look very cheap. It is not meant to be blown up to that scale.
Yeah.
I am not supposed to see all those pixels. When I look at it on my phone, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It scrolls just the right amount.
I will say, I think the tablet is the way to go. I'm currently,
that could be a sweet spot. Yeah.
The tablet I'm currently reading on is a 1920 by 1080. And I want to say it's 11 inches, something like that. And it's sort of the perfect middle ground between the desktop and the phone for both manhwa and manga. It sort of just fits right. Now, the manhwa fit better on the phone. Like there's no edges to it. It just goes right up to the sides, and it's full frame. Whereas on the tablet, there's sort of some side to it, so it doesn't quite fill everything. But just the way that it's like the resolution on it and everything, I found that is the optimal way for me, at least. It certainly makes sense that these are made for phones when you look at the different.
I had a much better appreciation of what in a traditional graphic novel would be the page turn mechanic. Mm-hmm. Where like Junji Ito is an example I always go to for this, where he will put the most shocking image or the reveal on a page turn
Yeah.
so that it surprises you. And in this, they did use that. There's a lot of like, I would scroll and it's a dramatic shot, like from underneath where she's looking very imposing and she's delivering some hard hitting thing. Scroll again, bam, shocked face. Like,
Right, where on a desktop you can only really
I can
see
see
half
all
of it
that
at a time or
Well,
something.
like I could see all of that all at once, and it's like, you ruined it. you ruined the pacing of it. Where I was like, I had a whole new impression of these because on a desktop they always look cheap. That's the only way I can think to describe it. And on the phone, I was just like, I get it now. I get what you're doing. It turns out I was just old.
Yeah. So as I said, I was happy with the art. I think, in terms of my favorites, this is definitely up there on the art side. I as I go through all of these, I think competency becomes more and more important in my evaluation, as opposed to the style or the prettiness or anything like that.
It's okay for something to be ugly as long as it's intentional and you're in control of the execution. Like an example is like going back to anime, Mob Psycho or something. Like Mob lets itself be ugly.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that ugly though. I'd call it stylized.
Some of the characters are ugly. They are intended to be ugly.
But that is the stylization. Like the point is that it looks like that. I would reserve ugly for someone didn't know what they're doing.
I don't know. Like to me, ugly is meant to be unattractive or unappealing in an intentional way. Whereas like just incompetent, I mean that like you can use ugliness to evoke a certain emotion.
Yeah, which is what I mean, and I get what you're saying.
We're just describing it using different words.
Yeah, I guess I just don't like the word ugly for that because of the connotation.
Ugly must be negative.
Yeah, to an extent. I honestly, I'm not sure how I would describe something that is purposefully meant to not look good. So, I mean, you might be right to that extent. You know,
but I know
we can let the listeners decide.
there are ones where the artist is obviously not in control of perspective and proportion and angle, and that's
the key thing, because there are other series on my list here that the story is like really good. It's super well paced, great execution, the drama, the romance, and everything, but the art is done poorly, and that is where I would go, oh, this is ugly. Like, I'm going to keep reading this. It's really good, but not because it looks right. Like, the consistency is bad. The angles are bad. The shot composition, those kind of things.
Well, and that is like, it seems like so far all of these we've done are based on a web novel.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, you're leaning heavily on the story's done. That's the easy part. You don't need to plot it out.
You still have to translate it into the medium, though.
You need to decide which lines to include and how the shots are going to flow and how the scenes are going to be structured. But the character interactions, the dynamics and all that stuff, a lot of hard work is done for you there.
Yeah, certainly.
Makes me wonder if I very recently got into the business side of all this. But I do know, like, for Faraway Paladin, at least, there was a company that buys light novels and then produces manga. They hire an artist to produce manga. I kind of wonder if it works that way for these, like, tapas things.
I think it's got to, because a lot of these series you look at and there's, like, at least two, if not more, people working on it. There's, like, the editor, there's the artist, there's the colorer, there's the writer who is adapting it, there's the original author. Like, there's so many people working on one series that, like, it doesn't make sense for it to not be by a company in some way.
I bet that's the business model for a lot of these. They buy web novels, put them on their site, and then they start transcribing them to other mediums.
Yeah.
I don't know if these get turned into anime.
They do, in fact. The example that I don't have on me right now, but there was one recently where I saw the announcement for the anime that was going to be coming out, and I was like, "That's a manhwa." I remember.
Was it like a scrolling cell phone comic?
Yeah.
Ooh,
I should probably find that at least for the next episode. So make a note of that so I can tell you about it. But yeah, I remember seeing that and going, "Oh, so they are going to make these into actual anime."
I mean, it makes sense. There's certainly, it's going to be a little bit trickier because you're not going to have like the manga as the storyboard. You're going to have to do a little bit more storyboarding work on the anime, but
there's definitely an audience for it though. I know people are listening to this. I know that you people from Bato are listening to us talking about this right now. I see you. My comments on Bato have been upvoted hundreds of times. I know that you're here. I know the audience for this exists.
I would watch some of these.
Oh,
yeah. Bare minimum, I would watch like the male lead's little lion daughter and author of My Own Destiny. Mm. The fact that I can remember some of these names is the tribute to how good they are. I don't remember the name of this very podcast more often than not.
Nice. Well, is it that time?
I think it's that time. I think we've gone as far as we can.
We gotta rate it. You ready to rate it?
Yes.
So, would you like to take a guess?
Let's say for you 7 out of 10.
Well, now that you say that, yeah, I think I have to mark it there. Only because this is a bit more depressing than what I like. I think the story is really well executed. Things make sense. The art is pretty good. It's very consistent and, tells the story that it needs to tell. But as stories go, this is more depressing, more I wouldn't say unnecessary drama, but more drama than what I'm into. So yeah, 7 out of 10. So certainly very, very still high up there, but not quite at the same level as some of the other series.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. 7 out of 10. There is potential to go up or down depending on the execution of the rest of the story.
Yeah, I might bump this up to an 8 if they really stick the landing.
I would be impressed. I think this one has the potential to surprise me, and that's a good thing. They're not just following the same formula. They're doing something with it. I always like that. So, yeah.
Something I should mention, since I did just say that, this is, I'm not super into the, the depressing stuff. I actually started reading a new series yesterday that and there's only like 12 chapters of this one so far, but as I'm reading it, I'm like, this is Villains Are Destined to Die, except it's a comedy. It's called Isn't Being a Wicked Woman Much Better? And I wouldn't say beat for beat it's the same thing, but the feeling I get from it is so much the same as this one. You have a protagonist who has, I guess her hair is purple instead of pink, so it's not quite the same thing.
It's purple instead of magenta, so
Yeah, it's It's right on the edge. It's definitely more purple, but it's that way. And she's doing the same thing where it's like, oh my god, I'm the villainess. It doesn't have the game aspect, but sort of like I'm the villainess, and I need to like continue to be the villainess, but do it in such a way that I'm like getting favor from people so I don't get murdered, kind of thing. Except it's a comedy. And I started reading that and I was like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
So that one might go on the list. It's only chapter 12 yet, so I can't really give that, any kind of endorsement or anything yet, but
I think a comedy would be, I mean, that would be more sustainable, because a drama can only go up and down so many times before you're like, okay, I know what you're doing. But a comedy is meant to be reset.
Yeah. All right. So this would normally be the part where we go, okay, what are we going to read next time? Let's look at the list. However, we got a recommendation.
Mein Gott.
So shout out to Rena, who actually commented on the blog, our first official comment.
Despite all my protests, someone finally commented.
Not only did she comment on heroin addiction and give us a recommendation to read, but she also commented on one of the regular podcast episodes. So she's getting around.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You guys have unprecedented power.
Exactly. So Rena recommended Concubine Walkthrough. And what's interesting about this is it is also a game monologue.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say it's also a game and we have to play it.
No.
So if I have to start playing these on Twitch or something.
Concubine Walkthrough is the name of the game that the female lead the protagonist gets sucked into. Now, this currently has 105 chapters, so we need to start reading right away. But I was checking out some of the reviews here. Very, very highly reviewed. So I'm excited to jump into it.
Okay. I could tell you, I don't know if the whole thing is like this, but I'm looking at the first page art. I really like this. It looks like, I forget who's the guy who does, I want to say it's like, his name's like Nakamura or something. He did all the Asian Kung Fu Generation album covers. Mm. I am dating myself and also referencing stuff that probably never came out in America. So, oh yeah, I like it. That's my point.
One thing that jumped out to me right away, the author and the artist are the same person.
Is it based on a light novel, though?
That's a good question.
Web novel?
Maybe not. I'm not.
Is that even allowed?
I don't know. We'll have to read it and find out.
All right.
So look forward to that. Read along with us if you want, or wait for our recommendation. I have a feeling we'll recommend it. It's very highly rated, so it would have to do something pretty terrible for both of us to not like it.
We haven't had like a true dud yet.
Well, I hope not. I specifically picked these ones out.
It's true. Yeah, I'm getting the curated response. I was commenting to somebody on that, like on the main podcast. I'm the curmudgeon who doesn't like anything, and then on heroin addiction, I was like, maybe I just really like romance, and then I have to remember it's like I am having somebody like weed through it all for me.
Yeah. If you want to hear about some of the terrible ones, go back and and listen to the "Is This an Intervention" episode. That was all of the terrible ones. We got those out of the way immediately. That was the genesis of heroin addiction.
Yeah, I think because I didn't hate the villainous one or whatever.
Yeah. You were like, yeah, this one isn't so bad. And I was like, what? So you can let us know what you think on our social media and tell us if you have a series you want us to cover. As you can see, we'll pretty much do anything anyone recommends. We are starved for attention.
Crave feedback.
So thanks again to Rena. And we'll give her a shout out every single time until someone else comments.
Might scare her away, but, if Manhwa has taught me anything, it says, as long as you're not putting a sword against somebody's throat.
Obsessive is okay.
Yeah, you're practically a gentleman.
Right. Be sure to check out our regular podcast. That time I got reincarnated in the same world as an anime podcaster. Those come out every month on every other week that this one isn't coming out. So check that out. Let us know what you think. You can find all of the information on our website, animepodcasterreincarnation.com. You can leave comments out there, listen to the podcast episodes, and we also have posts of reviews and other things that we put out there. We also have a Patreon, which is under Anime Podcaster Reincarnation. So you can hit us up on there. Give us a $1 or $2 to tell us that you like what we're doing. We're still looking for feedback as to what people might want out of the tiers on Patreon. So let us know what you think about that. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Isekai Sensei, and Ben is at Benbo Swaggins. You can also send us an email to isekaisenseisama@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube at That Time I Got Reincarnated as an Anime Podcaster. And we're also on Facebook. You can search for That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. And don't forget to rate us on whatever podcast platform you're on. And if the podcast platform you're on doesn't allow ratings, go on Good Pods and rate us there. And if you can't get enough of Ben talking about reading things, you can check out his other podcast, Words About Books.
I have another plug.
Go for it.
Instead of Words About Books, if you want to check out Ben reading things, I wrote a 9-page comparative essay on this Anime Podcaster Reincarnation blog of the Faraway Paladin light novel, the Faraway Paladin anime, and the Faraway Paladin manga. I unleashed my patented test to determine if a frame of a manga is too empty. I think you should all check that out. I'm going to be applying it to more things. It's an obscure topic in an absurd amount of detail.
I had to do it.
I did. I cared about it.
And with that, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And so now I'm off. I have to go visit my manhwa dealer.
'Cause I'll see you again.
These episodes just keep getting longer and longer.
You could cut long parts of my thing where I repeat, I'm sure.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything to cut.
It's all gold.
I mean, it's at least silver.
Hey, maybe people like long episodes.
Well, I hope so, because that's what they're getting. The main podcast keeps getting longer, and so does this one.
I'd wager we are probably doing some of the most thorough coverage of Korean webcomics, at least in English,